Hi, come on in.
And join in. It's the Very Merry Life. Hi, I'm Mary Hendricks, and you might know me as that relatable AF Mama over on Instagram who hopefully feels like an old friend at this point. And if not, it won't be long till it feels that way as we get raw, unfiltered, and very unapologetic in all things motherhood, marriage, sex, and more. From moments worth savoring to moments worth surviving, get ready to leave feeling seen and supported. You have a friend here now, so hey, take a seat. What's going on? Hi, Emily.
Hi, Mary.
Hi, yay. I am so excited for this. I'm excited about every podcast I do. It's just, you know why? It's because I finally have a chance to talk to an actual adult.
Yes, I can relate to that. And it's just nice to see your face and talk to you. And
yes. Same.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So before we get into talking today, I want you to introduce yourself to everyone.
Okay, sounds good. Don't mind the train. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's a train close to my house.
I love it.
Well, my name is Emily Dickt, and I am a stay-at-home mom to two little girls. They are 4 and 2, Penelope and Madison. And I've been married for 5 years to my husband, Sean. And we actually met while I was bartending. And I picked him up. He did not pick me up, but I gave him my number and he actually lost it. And then he came back a week later because obviously he knew where I worked. And then the rest kind of is history. He was stuck with me ever since. So
that's so cute. I love that. I love little stories like that because that's so rare. I feel like you don't hear stories like that as much. Like Kev and I met on Match.com. That's where we met.
I love those too, though. I think
it's neat. It's what's neat about those. Like for Match.com at first, when it happened, it was like very taboo at the time because I had graduated college and it was 2012. I graduated college in 2012. And then my friends had started. I think that was when Tinder had come out and like all those apps were starting to come out. And I had a friend tell me about Match.com. And so I decided I had a free trial. So I tried it and that's where I met Kev. And it's cool now thinking about it because I'm like, that's such a generational thing where like when I'm old and gray and telling my kids, like I was part of like the generation of online dating. Like that was when it first started. But at the time it was very weird, like, cause it was still not the norm yet at this point.
I feel like you hear about it so much more. When Sean and I first met, Tinder had just come out actually. Yep. And also what was weird about how we met is just, he had been coming to that restaurant for years.
Oh, I love that.
I was working there. And it just so happened that we connected. So I don't know. It's just weird how you cross paths with people, which I know we all do that, but how it happens for a reason. And then, but prior to being a stay-at-home mom, I was in social work and I actually managed a homeless shelter.
Oh, wow.
So my heart was with that for almost 5 years. And once I had my second, though, it was kind of like, I was part-time then, and I just wasn't sure if I was going to want to go back. And so once I did have her, I decided to stay home. And that's kind of how I started sharing on social media. It was right around when COVID hit. That's when I started sharing, just like so many of us did.
Yeah.
And, it was different then. It was, pictures, these curated photos, all the things that we all tried to do that we were not. And, it was fun. I documented my pregnancy. So that was really cool. It's neat to look back and see that. But I think that now that we have reels and everything, that's kind of where everything changed on that. And for me, is just being able to, I find when I look back on just growing up that I was never always being my true self, I don't think, because I was like, oh, I don't want somebody to judge me for this, or they're going to think I'm weird. And ever since being able to just share online and see how many people are agreeing with you or disagreeing, but also just saying, okay, I'm like that too. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm not as weird as I thought I was. I mean,
well, that's my story too, is essentially it was during COVID because I had 2 babies at the time. I had Spencer and Cassidy and COVID hit. So the world was on fire and I was partly kind of sharing beforehand, but again, it was a very perfectly curated thing because that was Instagram at the time. That TikTok didn't exist yet. I don't think
Yeah, I don't
TikTok
think it was really
existed yet.
popular.
Yeah, if it started, it wasn't anything that I was aware of yet. And I, Instagram was just mainly photos, some videos here and there, but stories. And it
Yep.
was like the preset color schemes,
Oh gosh,
very
yes.
perfectly organized, everything perfectly planned and tedious. And I tried it and I sucked at it because that's not me. It wasn't my life. I think there are some people that thrive at that because that is them. Like there are people that are really good at that, and that's awesome. And they figured it out, but
Awesome.
that was not me. And so once, same thing with the reels, I kind of just, but however, with me, I did try for a little bit. I did try to have this perfect facade and have, I know I watch back on like stories in the beginning of 2020 and even in 2021. And I honestly think it was my pregnancy that kind of like transformed me in how I showed up online because I didn't have any more energy to give a fuck. Where I was like, I'm just going to come on and say whatever the hell's on my mind because
Right.
I'm just tired of it. It's exhausting to not be yourself.
It's not always perfect. And that's not, honestly, I get the most response when I share the hard moments, when
Yeah.
I on and say, you know what, I'm having a really freaking hard day.
Yeah.
And people are like, I get it. Oh my gosh, me too. What's going on?
Yeah.
And if I come on and say I'm having a perfect day, nobody says anything, you
No,
know?
well, you almost, yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's almost like a fine line. Actually, I was telling Emily before we started this that I was going to meet with, I think Valeria,
Yes.
from a different account. And you're going to hear that interview at some point because I had to reschedule due to computer issues. But I was talking to her and we were going to talk about toxic positivity and whatever. But on a flip side, I do think that there needs to be something because it is starting to get negative where there needs
I
to
agree.
be there's now toxic negativity that always happens. There's always an
Yep.
extreme
Well, and
where
sometimes I find I'm like, I don't want to share too many like bad moments or tough moments. But I think we also have to allow the good to outweigh the bad. You know, we
yes,
do have good moments and share those too and mix those because that's what's going to keep us going. You know, there are so many good moments and the hard ones, while it seems like a lot, it's really not. You know, it's just
yeah,
it's hard to get through those moments, but
yeah, no, I agree. I said that yesterday when I was getting my hair done. I was talking to my hairdresser and I was like, you know what, I when you think about people when they try to like say negative stuff, especially when you're getting criticism and all that stuff, especially on social media, it's just there's an analogy, and I heard someone talking about it. It was so great. Where if I were to stand on my desk right now and you're on the floor, it is far easier for you to pull me down than it is for me to raise you up. It's always
yep,
going to be that way. So
yep,
positivity does have to exist. There has to be a room for all of that. But that's the we have to acknowledge how easy it is. The down is.
yep.
So we need to like acknowledge that and like find that even middle of like sharing the real shit, but not in a way where it's like making everyone fall into the shit.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's not good for anyone then.
Yeah. Yay. Well, okay.
Um,
So we're going to talk default parent today. That's what Emily and I wanted to talk because I think it's such a bitch. I actually had Kev try an exercise this morning and I was curious to see, and you should try this with your husband. And I want everyone to listen to actually try this. I was just listening to, do you follow, I'm going to mess up her last name, Renee.
yes. Oh my gosh. I was actually looking at her account last night. I don't
Yeah,
know
the
how to say her last
Mom
name.
Room podcast.
Yes.
Mom Room podcast. She's incredible. Renee Reina or something. She's amazing. But she recently just
Yep.
did an episode the other day, and it was just about marriage after kids. And I have to look back and see what the name of this book was. And she was saying how there was a doctor in it who wrote this book, and it was based off of studies that she did. And she took couples during pregnancy and then couples after babies were born. And she asked both couples to draw an identity pie chart. So she said for the pregnant mom, what defines you right now in your life? Like what makes you you? And then she asked the husband that. And so she looked at the pie charts comparing the overwhelming pie chart for, if you think about a pie chart, how it looks,
Yep.
overwhelmingly was motherhood, pregnancy, all of that overtook things.
Yep. Completely.
And then when she looked at the males, it was like a little sliver of the pie was fatherhood and pregnancy and stuff like that. Because obviously during pregnancy, they're not doing anything,
Right.
essentially. And then when she looked at like life after the baby was born, same thing. That sliver was a little bit bigger in fatherhood, but it wasn't overtaking anything, and it wasn't taking away from the other slivers of what
like
made
ours would.
Yes. And I asked Kev this morning, I was like, can you draw your identity pie chart? He got confused. And I explained that to him, but he was like, well, I don't want to give 5% of fatherhood. Like, I don't want to make 5% of fatherhood. Like, he said something about like 5% fatherhood and whatever. And I was like, 5%. But it wasn't like a negative thing. And I said that to him, and I was like, and it's not like Kevin's a great dad, but I was like, if you think about it, I was like, that is how it is. Like, that's
as compared
right?
to ours at
Yes.
what, 95%.
Yeah, well, and it's everything. Everything is defined, especially in like our years, because we have little kids. I feel like everything is encompassed in motherhood. Like at the end of the day, like you and I both talk about like self-identity and self-care and finding yourself in motherhood and whatever. Even when you find yourself, you're still a mom. Like you're finding yourself in motherhood. Motherhood is your pool. So it's just figuring out how to swim.
Taking on a new role. And it's just, that's, yeah. That's really interesting. I'll have to have Sean do that.
Yeah. See what his answers are. Cause I'd be curious to see like how people's responses are on that, because I think I have to read back and like, I want to find the name of the book and actually like look and see what she says, because I think just having someone like a couple do that together would probably break down so many conversations for
and it's couples. A good visual. I feel like when you just talk about it, it might not always be as clear to them. Yeah. But if you can actually visually both look at it and be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I see where, that's frustrating, because they don't always get it. No matter how good of a dad, husband that they are, they just don't always get it when they're not in our shoes. And both being stay-at-home moms also makes a big difference, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's yes. So however, I do want to say this too, and it was interesting, was talking, and right now, because Emily and I are both stay-at-home moms, we're both home. And if you don't know what the default parent is, if you're listening, you've never heard that word, it's answer this question. If you were on fire or in a full body cast, who would your child go to first to get a cup of juice? Like, who would you go? Like, that's my kids. I could be on fire. I could literally.
Also the person that has to announce when they're going to the bathroom.
Yep.
If you're leaving the room and you announce you're going to the bathroom, you're the default parent.
Yes, that, or who does like the planning, like the calendars, like the doctor's appointments, who knows the majority of the fine details. Like that is the default parent, the person that literally is carrying more of the mental load. And it's not necessarily that you guys are uneven and stuff. It's one person usually takes over. At the end of the day, it's like if you think about the team aspect, one usually is carrying a little bit more. And that's kind of how it is. I don't want to say 9 out of 10, but pretty close. 9 out of 10 times it's going to be the person with the uterus. It's going to be that way.
I also wonder too, sometimes though, since I do, we both stay home, is it like that because we're the ones at home? If we worked outside the home, a 9 to 5, just like our husbands, would it be the same? Would we still also have all of that?
We'll be back after a quick break. Eye-Opening Moments podcast are real-life stories of adversity, encounters, and perspectives. They are moments that can lift your spirits, give you some food for thought, or move you. For the introspective mind that likes to reflect, discover, and find solutions or meaning in a complex life, listen to Eye-Opening Moments podcast.
What was interesting, I actually recently had a guest on the Stay-at-Home Daddy Life, and that's his handle. So he's a stay-at-home dad. And I was so excited to have him.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Well, yeah, because we don't hear about that. So I was talking to him about that, and he's more of the default because he's home the most. So I think for him, it's definitely that way just because he handles a lot of that. But he also said, like, for him and his wife definitely have a structure where, like, she's currently pregnant. So she is, fronting the brunt of that. And it was a different conversation. And he said, but I do handle a lot of that. I do handle the schedules, and I get more comfortable with my child, and they know us because we're home majority of the time. But a lot of the things that he covered was like not gender specific, which was pretty cool. Where, like, hearing that, I was like, that's actually a really great eye opener to see that it's not just because I'm a woman that I am the default parent. It's not just because of that. However, I do think research based, especially when you talk to moms who are in an office or working outside, that a lot still does fall on their shoulders simply because they hold the title mom.
Yep.
Which is interesting.
I would definitely.
So,
which just, already being mom is exhausting. But when you have all those other things, and I guess it's, we're talking about, are we looking for a solution to it? Or are we just saying, this is, where we're at. This is just where we're at in our lives right now with little kids.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a both. I think, you know what? I think it depends on who you're with. Like, I know for me, like, I get frustrated at Kev sometimes about it. And I think what happens and why it's so important to have these conversations is because of, like, building resentment and frustration with your partner. I think that's the thing that hits the hardest in life after kids. Like, when you're married and when you have kids, when that default parent clicks in and you start realizing it, you start getting resentful. Like, I know for me, like, I've gotten mad. I wasn't mad. I was not mad. I was a little frustrated, and I called Kev and was like, what's going on? I called him last week because my mom and I were on the phone, and she said, well, your dad's about to leave here. I guess he's going to go meet Kev with someone else that my dad and Kevin and whatever know. They went to dinner. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, he's leaving here in a little bit to go meet Kev and so-and-so and at dinner. I was like, oh. And she's like, you didn't know about this? And I was like, no. And she's like, oh, okay, it's fine. So I called Kev. I was like, hey, are you going to dinner tonight? And he was like, well, yeah. I thought I mentioned that was the possibility, like, possibly the plan, like a week prior. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, well, should I not go? And I was like, because I was a little short. And I was like, no, it's fine. Go. And then I told him afterwards because I needed to, like, digest it because I can be a little bitchy. Yeah. And he got home and I was like, what's frustrating, Kev, is, like, that I'm holding down the fort. That I have the shit handled where you don't second guess making
the kids are taken care of anything.
Yes. And I said, and it's great. Like, I do have it taken care of. And I'm like, I'm glad I can do that. But it's like, there's something very frustrating about knowing that when and then when I have to make a plan, like, I got my hair done yesterday. He took care of the kids. I had to make sure that he was comfortable and that he felt good doing it. And I'm like, that fucking pisses me off. I'm like, I'm done with that. Like,
even I went out to dinner last night and I had to leave by 6. And so I told, I had to text my husband, tell him what time I needed to leave by. And then I was frustrated because he didn't even try to leave work a little bit early so that maybe I could get ready by myself.
Yeah.
Or, I had barely any time.
Yeah.
And I was kind of short with him about that. And I said, well, it would have just been nice if you would have left a little bit earlier so I could have. But then I'm like, well, I didn't say that. I guess I should have said.
Yeah, well, and that's the frustrating part because I've had that happen before. Like, when did I have that? I remember we were going somewhere and everyone got cleaned up and showered before me. And then I was the last to get showered and we were in a hurry. And now everyone was taking care of it and I wasn't. And then I was pissed because I was like, you know what? I look like shit. We're going to go here and I look like crap, but everyone else is clean. Everyone else matters before me. Like, it got really angry. I've had moments like that. But I think the biggest thing, and you know what? What's interesting, and again, if you listen to that episode I was talking about with Renee's Mom Room podcast, and she started right off the bat, and again, she was reading through this book, and so she wasn't just original thought; it was like what this book was outlining, and she'd said we need to stop asking for help with our spouses and partners, and we need to stop calling it help, And we need to, and not in a way that like you're done asking for help, being like, don't help me. Stop calling it help. It's them just it's not even that. Like, hey, babe, do you mind helping me with this? No, it's their children too. They should just be doing it. It should just be the norm. And then she said, and we need to reaffirm that by like, because I know in my messages, if I ever talk about like how Kev manned the children yesterday at the hair appointment, I have people saying, you're so lucky. Like, lucky you have someone stepping in. We need to stop doing that. Like it's not luck. It's him taking care of the children that he helped create. Or not helping take care of the kids. It's him taking care of the kids he helped create. See how that rolls off the tongue of saying help?
Yep, it does. It's so easy to do that. And I do think too, as far as, being the default, we have to sometimes take a step back too, to let them step in.
Oh, 100,000%.
Kids are having a meltdown. My 4-year-old only wants me. But I've been with her all day. I'm exhausted. You know what? He can take care of it. He can do it. And yes, would it be easier if I just stepped in and helped her? Yep, it would. But also she needs to see that her dad can take care of her. He can comfort her and love her just like I can.
Yep.
And maybe it takes a little bit longer, but that's also something that I feel like have to do, because it's always, but it's just easier if I do it.
Oh, for sure. And that's something we do need to take responsibility on that. I 1000% agree, because I am the same exact way. And when I was talking to the Charlie, who was a stay-at-home dad, we were talking, I said, you know what? I talk about certain things like that when I shared a reel saying, like, when we want to break, like, we don't want to be texted every few seconds while we're out asking where things are. We don't want to come home to the house a mess, like things like that. And I don't say this, and someone comment on that reel saying, like, you know what, this is bashing husband who gives bad raps to dads and whatever. And I said, that's not what this is about. Like, you don't understand is like, I want that for my husband. I want that confidence. Like, I want him to know that he can do it because he can. I want this for men, because we've continuously told men and husbands that they aren't as valuable in this whole scheme, that they are, not as important, that the mom comes first and the mom can do it all. And that it's
like when you see those reels where they talk about, you see a mom with all 3 kids going into Target, everything, you don't even think twice. But then when it's a dad, it's like, oh gosh, and it shouldn't be like that. It should be that dad's with his kids. That's great. Just like we would do the same thing. It shouldn't be, it should just be the norm for them to do those things, not be praised overly for that.
No, it's just them being with their kids. It's like they created it took 2 to tango and create their kids, assuming that you both wanted the kids together. But even if not, tough shit. Like, it's
how it is.
2 people to tango, and you are just as responsible for your kids and taking care of them, as you can. And I think, we definitely need to take some ownership. It might not look the same. I think that was the big thing for me, where the way my husband, we parent pretty similarly, but he does things different, and that's okay. And I've definitely had to just bring it down a notch to allow him to do that, because if you're nitpicking things, if you're just constantly criticizing things that he could have done different, they're not going to want to do anything.
No, they're not. They're just going to sit back and let you take over it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's, again, with the confidence and just showing them that they can do it. And, even I've told my 4-year-old, Dada's got you. You're okay. You're fine. He's going to put you to bed tonight. And we actually had to go. I was putting her to bed all the time. Yeah. And it got to the point, though, where she refused to have him put her to bed. So we have now this like rotation with her because of that. It was a nightmare every night because she wanted me. Yeah. And so now it's just, we hold firm with it, and we just have to. He's putting you to bed, and it's more difficult for him sometimes. And, yes, it's frustrating, especially when it's 8 o'clock and we're both tired. We just want to sit down and relax if she's throwing a fit. But I think it does show them too. Yeah. And that is really helpful.
Oh yeah. We went through that. God, we go through it. Cassidy's gotten better, but Cassidy went through that. And that was the big thing. Like, I think once you have that, I mean, these conversations are so important, especially if you're planning on having more than one kid. I feel like when you're one kid, like usually that default might fall on one person's shoulders, and at least it might not seem, but when you have 2 kids, 3 kids, whatever, you just feel that. And I know with Kev, like he always took over when I brought a new baby home, like when I brought Spencer home or brought Haley home, he always manned the older. And that was always easier for me where we split duties. Obviously, when I'm home alone, then we do what we can. But I think that's where like it's interesting. There's growing pains with it. So if you're listening and you're like in a little bit of a rut, just know that there's growing pains with figuring out that role. And even at the end of the day, it might not be, equal in some things. Like I had a guest say the other day, or I had two guests say that very similar things. It was the stay-at-home dad, and then it was I had Katea who was on, and she's wonderful. I don't know if you follow her. I love her. But she was talking about her relationship with her husband. She said, you know what, people like to compare and say like, I do 80, they do 20, or I do 50, they do 50, and like all that stuff. She said, no, we both come in at 100 and 100. And she said, that's what we both come in is we're 100, 100, but that 100, 100, both of us are presenting our strengths at 100, 100. And when you look at it, sometimes that might look a little bit different, but we are still matching our efforts together. But essentially, like I have skills that my husband might not have. My husband has skills that I don't have. And we're both coming in at 100% with those skills that differ to make it work. And I said, I love that because that way it's not so tit for tat or like trying to make it even and equal, because at the end of the day, you're not the same as your spouse. You're not doing everything the same. It's about finding that teamwork. One might be pushing a little bit harder forward and, one might be leaning back a little bit more. It all varies.
Well, and that's how couples work too, I mean, when we meet each other, we each have our own strengths and we kind of mesh together.
Yep.
And we have our strengths and our weaknesses.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking about.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go. I'm delayed. It's delayed on here. That's the hard part sometimes. It gets delayed.
I was thinking about, I had a reel that went viral. Actually, I had posted it almost a year ago, and then I just reshared it again around New Year's, and it's picking up again. And the headline of it was things I do as a mom that are annoying.
Yeah.
Which really should have said things I do that make me the default parent.
Yeah.
But the 3 things in it were asking if it's okay to take a shower, and feeling guilty for leaving the house. Whereas typically a lot of times I know with my husband, he's just like, I'm going to do this and it's not a big deal about like, missing the kids or not being there for certain things. And also just saying, I don't know why I feel like I have to say this tagline after things, but I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I have to, and I catch myself doing it. And so many moms were commenting saying, oh my gosh, I do all of those things.
Yeah.
And we do them and it's just second nature to do it. And I don't just like, why should I have to ask to do these things? And I don't have to. It's not even like my husband makes me feel that I need to, but they just go to do things and they don't even think twice about it.
No, they don't. And that's where like, it gets so annoying sometimes. I said to Kevin, I'm like, Duke, what's your thoughts like? What do you think about? Like, when you're at work, are you thinking about the kids? He's like, yeah, of course I think about the kids. And I'm like, do you really think about the kids? But I'm like, and
maybe when you send him a picture or something.
Yeah, right. But he was like, yeah, of course I do. And I'm like, I don't think you do. But, and not to say that that's bad. Like, and that's the big thing. And I've had this conversation with my mom too, because sometimes like you build up resentment where you're like, I just want to know that like, and they do. But I think that's the hard part is like Kev is at work. And I think everything that goes in to work, I know for Kev, like everything that he puts his effort forth
it's all in there. Yeah.
It's all in there. Like he's doing this because he wants it for his kids. Like he's doing this for his kids. It just shows differently. While for us, it's just
we're just like, wired differently.
Yes, we are. It's not that we're different in that like the final end goal I think is the same. It's just the thought process of getting there where like we are all in our head and like we're head, their heart. Like I think that they're doing it with heart and with the focus of knowing that this is all for something, we are so in our head. We obviously have the heart portion, but we're just like crazy.
We're like
not crazy, but we are kind of crazy. Head. Yeah.
Well, I know. Or even it kind of goes with, I've struggled with anxiety a lot of my life. I feel like it's kind of come in waves up and down. And I say to my husband, what's it like to not like worry about things, to not be anxious? I've never once heard him say that he's anxious or, he can't catch his breath or, this and that. And until we kind of get into arguments about that sometimes, because I'm just like, you don't understand what that feels like when you can't even breathe and everything is just happening. And I mean, a million things come from this anxiety, then overstimulation, like all the things. And they just, I don't know.
No, well, I had that the other day because I shared that, I don't know if you saw that reel where it was like the thing, like making my way through postpartum for the third time reel. And there was a clip in the beginning of me just sobbing. And I look rough. Like you can tell I'm just like a wreck. And I had someone ask a question on there saying like, I need to know the backstory of that. Like, cause you just look like your heart is broken in that. And I had like the story on that one was we had Haley. I had anxiety the entire pregnancy. I think that was the first experience. And I've had anxiety here and there. I don't think I knew what that was.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of taken over different forms where I never really truly identified that that's what it was. And with Haley being pregnant, I always expected the worst. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop the entire time. Yep. Just waiting for catastrophe. Couldn't breathe. Very snappy. Very like it's like you can't get your feet to touch the ground. It's a very frustrating feeling.
It is.
And then when I had her, same thing. And I think with that, I had a little like PTSD. I had a sister that passed away, and I think I had a little PTSD coming from that I didn't expect, but I think it all boiled into anxiety and everything. And I remember we were at the first doctor's appointment. I remember the entire hospital journey, like of us having her, I waited for them to tell me something was wrong. Like I just remember, and I remember while we were in the hospital, they came and listened to her heart in the hospital room. And they told me that they heard a little murmur, which I guess was normal. I guess babies can have a murmur because it takes a little bit for their heart to close up a valve or some shit. And they told me that, and I'm like dying, like secretly dying in my bed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then I had a night where she was cluster feeding, and then I had a C-section. So she's cluster feeding and C-section, awful, on 2 hours of sleep, maybe in 48 hours.
Oh yeah.
And a nurse offered to bring her out into like, just, they don't really have nurseries where we're at anymore.
Right. They don't anymore either.
No, it's so bullshit. But they brought her out, and the nurse came in, and she knew that I was like, I couldn't keep my eyes awake, but I needed to nurse her every 15 minutes. And so she was like, I'll take her. She said, I'll take her and we'll put a pacifier in her mouth and she'll be okay. And so they brought her out for 3 hours, and they took her, and I think I fell asleep because of exhaustion. I laid in bed crying because I couldn't stand the anxiety I was having. I couldn't even just the thoughts going through your head are unreal.
You just can't turn it off.
No. And then I look over and Kevin's sleeping, like calm. And I'm like, fuck you. Like, what is this? And then right after that, then we went to the doctor's appointment, and then she failed her newborn screenings and everything. That. And I think in that moment with that video, that was the first time I've ever had anxiety make me disassociate, where I just couldn't. It was a full out of body experience where the best way I try to explain it to people, because my husband doesn't know, and I was just talking to him about this, and he was like, yeah, it was really scary. And I'm like,
no,
it wasn't. And I tried to explain it to him. I was like, Kev, imagine trying to imagine floating. Like someone just immediately puffed you up with something and you were flying and you were trying so hard to put your feet back on the floor. I said, that's what it feels like. Or like you're trying to hold onto a cliff and you can't, or you're trying to hold on to sand and it's slipping. Like that is what anxiety feels like, is no matter how hard you grasp, you can't get there. And it's a frustrating out of out of control experience, and it was awful.
Yep.
And they just don't get it. He didn't get it. And I was like,
and he still didn't get it.
no.
And they just, I mean, I guess though that's one reason that we work too, though, because can you imagine if we both
no,
have
well, no, it's
anxiety
so
like that?
true. No, it's so true.
My husband's my calm. You know, I trust him with everything. I'm sure you do with Kev. You know, I look to him if something, you know, bad is happening, even in the world. I'm like, tell me that we're going to be okay. You know, tell me that it's okay. And if he does, I'm okay. Like I can.
No, well, that's Kev. That is Kev to a T, because that is how I am. I run around like Chicken Little a lot of the times, where I'm just constantly thinking that the world is ending and the sky is falling. And he's just like, Mary, calm down. Like, and not, he doesn't say calm down, because if he said that, I would probably
rip his head off.
Yeah. But he just kind of puts things in perspective, but the same way that I do for him, like, because there are certain moments where he will get ahead of himself, or, you know, like even lately, Kev is so passionate about his work, and work was going really bad that he would come home and realize that it was affecting him, like his mood and stuff like that, where I had to put him in check of being like, hey, like, this is the bigger picture. Like, this is the bigger picture. And that's what he has to do, because thank God, if he were the same as me,
no, we'd be in trouble. And so I guess we have to, you know, thank them for their calmness, even though it's frustrating sometimes, because you just want them to say, I totally know how you feel.
Yeah.
When we're talking, or you're talking to a girlfriend, and that's what is so good about having good support from other moms, because when somebody tells me, I totally get it, I've been there, there's nothing more comforting than that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's the best thing. That's all you want. And I don't even necessarily need Kev to be there. And I think we've gotten really good at that, where I tell him everything. But I told him, and he was like, okay, well, he doesn't get it per se, but he is willing to listen and not make me feel stupid. And I think that is
right. No, definitely.
Yeah. Like, he doesn't make me feel like I'm some crazy lunatic woman, where I'm like, okay, this is how I'm feeling. He's like, no, well, this is important to you, and this is how you're feeling, and it's going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay.
You know, they'll listen, but also you maybe even bring up points that you hadn't thought of, and, you know, help you navigate that.
Yeah. It's empathy. That's what we all need to get better at, is empathy, because we're not all going to walk in each other's shoes. We're not all going to have similar situations, but we can just listen. Even if they just listen, they don't even have to say anything back. I think if Kev didn't even say anything at all and just sat there while I rattled off. Right.
Well, and because sometimes I don't need you to tell me what to do sometimes, unless I ask you, you know, give me your input, but you just want somebody to listen.
Yeah.
Show empathy, give you a hug.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally what therapy is. If you ever I have a therapist, and that's what all I do. I just like rattle afterwards. She just sits there. And I'm like,
pour me some wine, you know, something.
I brought a glass of wine to my Zoom therapy meeting, and I was like, I don't know if I should do this. Is that allowed?
Is this appropriate? Maybe I should have put it in a coffee mug.
I think I did. I did. I'm not even kidding, because I got up there and I realized it was like 5 minutes before we logged on, and I was like, I don't think this is appropriate. But then I don't think why would that not be?
I mean, it's not like you were coming on there drunk.
Well, no, I wasn't, but I was still sipping on wine, because I was like, it's therapy. It's 7:00 at night. The kids are in bed. I'm going to sit down and enjoy myself. And I poured it, but then I was like, it's not appropriate. However, then you're sipping out of a coffee mug and making like, I love wine, but you still make a little bit of a stinky face when you drink it, because it's not juice. So it's just like, it still tastes like something not the greatest thing in the world. So
they probably know.
Oh, she totally knew. I'm like going in there hesitant, like.
Well, and you're not taking like a big sip.
Yeah, you're like,
it's like,
well. She totally knew. She probably and she probably didn't even know it was wine. She probably thought it was worse, like vodka. Right. Or some
just
shit.
Straight vodka. That's it. No, I could not.
No. Mm-mm. No. Well, I think this is such an important conversation. I think this is like one of those things where if you're listening right now, if you're in like, being a parent in general is just hard as shit, and being married and figuring out that role in there is huge. That's when like marriage gets tested, is this. There's a reason why marriages really struggle with parenthood.
Did you see, I've seen it shared a couple of times. Maybe you saw it. I was on some talk show, but Michelle Obama was on, and she said there was a good 10 years that I did not like my husband.
Yep.
And she said, and it was those first 10 years with little kids. She said, he would walk in the door and I was like, I'm out of here. I am, when even coming from someone like that, just saying how hard it is. And she said, we really didn't like each other then a lot, we had a lot of hard times, but now, we're out of the fog. It does get better. And that's not to say it's bad right now, but it's testing us. And it's, the hard moments and having to be there for each other, but also, apologizing for our faults. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have a, moment and then I come back, I'm sorry, can we start over? I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it's most of the time when we go out, it's not, we don't have the problem. It's the kids that cause the problem.
No, of course
the kids that are, screaming and are making us go insane, from 4 to 7 p.m. when we're just like about to lose our minds.
Yep.
And that's when you really like appreciate them because you're like, okay, we do love each other.
Yeah, it's just the kids that are kind of making us forget that little tidbit, which is normal. It's so normal. And that's the thing, like it's just a new role. Like, and that's I think it gets easier if you both admit that you're figuring it out. Like, you don't need to automatically, like, you loved each other. You fell in love because of the base human beings. Hopefully that's why you fell in love. It's like, because you guys knew each other at its core. But now we have different factors that are going to shift us around. And motherhood, you're different. We're different for the rest of our entire lives. The moment you become a mom, there's a reason why, like, I love that word matrescence. Like, when I learned that word, I don't know, there was something so validating about learning what that word is. You know what that word is? Matrescence?
I don't think so.
So matrescence, essentially, and I'm going to get the definition wrong, but just to sum it up in my own wording, it is the spiritual, physical, mental transformation of a woman into motherhood. It is the same in physicals in there. It is essentially, if you think about like how women go through puberty, kids go through puberty, it's a stage of life. That is matrescence. So it's a physical, spiritual, mental shift that happens, a transformation that happens in women. That
completely makes sense.
Yeah. And it was incredibly validating when I learned what that was, because it didn't make motherhood seem like a small blip that was to be unacknowledged, because I think that's what we do sometimes is we're like, oh, we just became moms. Like, why should we have been changed so much? Like, no, I became a mom. I am going to be a mom until the day I die. Like, I will always,
changed. Right.
Yes, you're changed. You're changed forever. The brain chemicals are changed. Your body is changed. I don't know about you, but spiritually, I got changed the moment I had kids. The way I think got changed.
I mean, you don't know until it happens.
No,
you can't.
No.
You think you can do all the classes and you can read everything, but until you become a mom and you see how that works.
Yep.
I mean, I was very humbled.
Yeah.
Once I became a mom, had my first, I feel like, okay. But then once you have more,
yep.
Then it's just like, okay, like this is tough. And I don't say that to scare anybody. I think it's just also that knowing that you're not alone. If it feels, why does this feel so hard? It's hard for all of us.
Oh, it's hard for everyone. And I think it's hard for a pretty incredible reason. Like, I think that's what I always boil it down to is like, again, it's not just a tiny blip. You literally just created a human being. Like, when I think about that, sometimes I get freaked out. Sometimes when I think about that, I'm like, that is a completely different person than you and I. They are not our twins. Right. We didn't just replicate ourselves. We just created something
pretty freaking insane.
Yeah, someone entirely new. The world has never known this person before. Right. You just created something that will never happen again. Never happen again for the rest of your entire life, forever. That will never happen again. What you just did was a one-off experience that will now hopefully go and impact the rest of the life, impact the rest of the world and eternity. Like that is how crazy it is when I think about that. And sometimes it's like such a deep thought where I'm like, I think about that sometimes when I really think about how hard it is. And I'm like, it should be hard. Like for something as incredible as that, it should.
Did we really think it was going to be easy?
Yeah, did we really think that was going to be the easiest thing? No. I think we make it harder for ourselves, honestly, because I think we are so in our head.
Oh yeah.
And we have gotten so far away from support and help in others, not from our spouses, because help does not come from our spouse. That is just their norm. Just get away from that. But we get away from having that village mentality where we're just making it harder for ourselves, where we're burnt out. Moms are burnt out at this point.
Burnt out.
Yes. So anyway, hope that gives you hope.
Yeah. Hopefully that helps.
Hopefully that helps. But not really. I mean, yeah, it should. Honestly, I don't try to go into this stuff. Like I never have solutions and advice, but I think sometimes that's not always needed. I think it's just listening to this right now and just knowing that what you're doing is amazing work. Like your hard days is amazing. Like it's amazing work that you're doing on the hardest days. You're making it through. If your marriage is being tested, it's because it's for an incredible reason, but you're doing hard work. It's going to be tested. Anything's going to be tested. And for anyone listening, if I have to give advice, especially if it's your spouse, if you're stuck in the car right now, listening to my voice with your wife, you're welcome.
Sorry.
Yeah. You're welcome. I want you. It's empathy. You don't have to understand everything. You don't have to understand everything, but I need everyone to understand how tremendous this is.
Listen huge. There.
Yeah.
That's all we want at the end of the day. That's what we want.
It's tremendous. And we're doing it together. We're both figuring it out. And not to say fatherhood's not tremendous, because it is. We need to be able to ride that parallel with one another and know that we can appreciate that, but grow parallelly. Is that a word? How do you do that? You grow.
Is it simultaneously?
Yeah, it's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. We can grow simultaneously in the heart.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to link everything for Emily and all of her information in the show notes. That way you can follow her over at Take a Minute Mama, right?
Yes. I don't think I said that at the beginning, but yes, I'm at Take a Minute Mama.
Awesome. And then I'll have everything. If you have any other links, I'll make sure to share those as well. And you're also on TikTok. Love that.
Yes. Take a Minute Mama on there as well.
And that's it. So again, you're doing an incredible job. If you're listening, if you're having a hard day. And thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Mary.
Another episode down and way more to go. But thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to help support this podcast, I would love for you to subscribe. I'd love for you to share it with others and post about it on your own social media or leave a rating and review. I cannot tell you how helpful and how appreciated those things are for me. Of course, to catch all the latest from me, you can follow me over on Instagram at The Very Merry Life, over on TikTok, The Very Merry Life. And even if you wanted to check out my monthly newsletter, you can do so by subscribing over at theverymerrylife.com. I'll see you next week. Stay tuned for more honest, raw, real chit chat. I have some amazing moms lined up coming on, and shit's going to get fun. So buckle up, Buttercup. It's going to be good.